Hey guys, I'm going to do a video talking a little bit about pistons, the difference between a 5.9 piston and a 6.7 piston. Had some guys asking about it, so we'll do one up. Let's get after it here. So from left to right, this is a stock intercooled style piston for a 12 valve. This is a marine piston for a 12 valve. There is some variations of this. It's just ones I have sitting here. There should be a 325 horse, or sorry, a 305 horse Cummins piston, and then a VP44, which are very similar to the 6.7, obviously just smaller bore. I just don't happen to have them sitting here. So then 325 horse Cummins and 5.9, and then 6.7 piston. Now there is a couple variances of this piston as well, but for the instance that we're talking about, everything's the same. So now if you're getting into doing just a stock-ish build of a 5.9 12 valve, this piston is a pretty good piston for it. Now you can go into a Molly Motorsports piston and get a better piston. So if you're making, like, let's say above 800 horsepower, I would recommend doing that. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with these pistons. Now there is a couple variations of these pistons with this style of bowl in it. And a lot of what that is where the ringland happens to fall here. And we'll be able to do some testing and stuff on this type of stuff as soon as I get the dyno, which I will be buying. I want the dyno. But anyways, next one, there's the marine piston, and you can see that ringland, how much thicker that ringland is. Now, it's like considerably thicker, right? If I can get them lined up. So anyways, if you're gonna do a 6.1 build, a 12 valve 6.1, I like to use this style of piston. It doesn't have to be a marine. You can get that. You can get it where the ringland is farther down. But personally, if I'm doing a 6.1, I use a marine bowl myself. But you want something that has the ringland really far down. And the reason for that is when you're building the 6.1, you're using 12 valve block, 6.7 crankshaft, stock length rod. You have to take off depending on how much the block has been surfaced. But if the block, everything is all factory, you need to take like 80 thou off the top of this piston, because the piston's going to protrude too far, stick out of the block too far. So you want something that has lots and lots of meat here for heat retention and that type of stuff, heat dissipation. And so anyways, so that would be the piston that I would want to be using for that myself. And you can get it into a Molly Motorsports piston. There again, depending on what kind of power you're making, they make them out of better material. This is just a factory style marine piston, like would come in a 370 or a 370 horse marine engine. Now, getting into the next kind of ramp up here, there, for instance, use your imagination, a 305 horse piston and a VP44. There is some differences, but for what we're talking about here, they're basically the same as this. The bore sizes are the same, not as the 5.9, so this size, but with this style of bowl. So we were talking a little bit about wrist pin height in the piston. So what I was talking about is the distance from here, from the top of the piston to here, or actually center line. Everything runs off center line, but for what we're talking about, basically the distance from here to here versus the distance from here to here on 5.9. So 6.7 piston, 5.9 piston, all the 5.9s are the same-ish, like within a couple thou that I know of. Could be wrong on that, but a couple thou. So now, saying that, what if you're building a 6.4, you're going to use a 6.7 piston, 6.7 block, 6.7 bore, obviously because you're using a 6.7 piston, with a 5.9 crankshaft. And then the rods you need, which Wagler doesn't make them in their forged rods, you have to buy billet rods, are 80 thou longer. The reason for that is the height difference in the piston. So in that overall pin height to the top of the piston, And that's the reason you need to use the 80 thou longer rods. Now there is another way to do it, which I have done. I didn't have an issue. It's not recommended. If you take a 6/7 block and you surface off 80 thou off the block, you can do it without buying billet rods. I don't recommend doing it that way. I have done it that way with no issues. Not high horsepower engines. It was just, we needed an engine. The guy, I knew you could do it. It did do the job. Still runs and drives every day. So just to be forewarned, it is possible. So, but your pin height difference, let me just slide these together here. But just to give you guys a visual reference. There's your visual reference in the height. There's the visual height difference. So it is 80 thou anyway. So now if you wanted to build a 6/1, or some people call them 6/2s, so there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can use a 5/9 block. You can do a 5/9 block, use this piston or a 305 horse piston. You use a 6/7 crankshaft, and then there again you cut off 80 thou off the whatever top of the piston you're using. Now, a lot of guys, what they do is, and this is what's in my race truck, is you use a 6/7 block, you sleeve the block down to a 5/9 bore. So basically you get a 5/9 block with a super thick sidewall. I don't know exactly how thick they are off the top of my head, but you're considerably thicker. So it strengthens the block. Now in my instance, that engine that's in the race truck is a, to say it is a 12 valve 5/9 using a 6/7 block. So the block just is inherently stronger from the design of the 6/7 block plus the cylinder wall strength. So you can do that as far as, and then you can do it so you can do a deck plate motor, which uses a 1-inch longer rod, and then you put a 1-inch steel plate on top, and then you insert a sleeve into that, which makes the block even stronger. But that's it for 99.9% of guys. They're never going to get into building a deck plate motor because they're a lot of work and a lot of money. But for instance, that gives you an idea. So that's really the difference. That's the biggest difference in a 6/7 engine versus a 5/9, is the block dimensions are very, very similar. The only thing is, to the block, as far as dimensions that make it different from a 5/9 per se, is that the bore is bigger. So the block itself really is not much different. Now the crankshaft has obviously more throw on it, or stroke, than the 5/9, and that's the reason that they've changed the pin height difference for the piston, so that the piston doesn't come all the way through or protrude too far. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit of stuff for you guys on that. I don't know if there's anything. Now, I'll do a quick little bit of a overview, I guess. So you can, if you have an 03, 04 truck, you can put a 6/7, if it's a 305 horse, you can put a 6/7 long block in it and not change anything. The Bowles style is eerily similar. And then you get a 6/7 out of the deal. Now, if you want to do a 6/7 but in a 325 horse, there's two options to do it, depending on what you're doing. Now, if you're rebuilding the engine, you can go to a QSB style piston, which is like this, but in a 6/7. Or you can change the nozzles from the injectors. So if you're still running your 5/9 operating system, so your injection system, you can use nozzles from a 305 horse or a 6/7 on it, as long as you're having them calibrated and set. Or if you're having new injectors built, just tell them, hey, I'm using this style of bowl versus this style of bowl, and they can set you up with that. So then you can get into a 6/7. The only thing there, again, if you are doing a 6/7, you want to make any amount of power, at the very least, I would be doing 12 valve rods. If you're not doing 12 valve rods, I would recommend these Wagler rods. And then if you want to step it up the next, you can go into a forged or a billet rod, obviously. But just like I said, the price point on these things I really like. And they seem like a really good rod. They're well built. you know, just one of those things. And this is not a paid endorsement. I pay when I buy this stuff, I buy everything as of right now. I pay for everything. You know, like obviously I get a little bit of a deal because I'm a shop, but you know, like I don't get sponsor deals or any of that type of stuff. All this stuff is coming directly out of my pocket. I'm just like you guys. I got to work. You know, I want toys. I have to work for them. So I don't know if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about. There is a bunch of these. There's different designs, whether it's a marine application or non-marine application, and different horsepower levels, and you can get dual keystone rings, which actually inherently aren't as strong as I originally anticipated they might be. I was talking to Weston over at Infinite Performance about it, and he actually said that when you get into a certain horsepower range, they like to break that dual keystone. So I do actually have a set of those dual keystones in my race truck, but they're an old style. They're a Molly Motorsports piston, but from years ago. So I don't know. I guess when they break, we'll be fixing it. But anyways, we'll worry about that when the time comes. I guess we'll get to build another motor. But that pretty much answers that question. And if you're getting into, so if you wanted to do a 6.7 bore with a 5.9 or with a 12 valve head, I do believe that there is options for pistons. I'll have to look into it a little bit, but I believe that there is options for pistons, but they're not going to be cheap. They're going to be expensive pistons. So just so you're forewarned, if you want to do that. The reason that I did the 6.7 block in the race truck was I was after the strength, and I wanted to do something different. So that's the reason I did it. But it's a lot of work to sleeve that engine, to do the block side of things over and above like doing the 6.7 P pump that we're doing. It probably adds, I would say, a solid 7 to 9 hours to the time to build the engine, having to sleeve it. So it's considerably more work. But I think we're going to call it good on this one. Please like, subscribe. If you have any questions, hit me down below, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.